Hello. Are we on? So I never know how long it takes to actually start the stream. So what's up, everyone? I'm going out of town for the 4th, one of my all-time favorite holidays. So I just wanted to do a little stream before then. I mentioned on my last stream with Bruce Dietrich Price about education, you should check it out, and about how K through 12 is a disaster, that I had gone to a RedForEd rally. It was more of an InvestForEd rally because, here, let me show you the website here. It's called InvestForEd because they're trying to get petitions signed in order to take $600 million out of the pockets of the taxpayers and put it into the schools. And what kind of barbarian would be against education? But I have concerns. So I went to the rally. I got kicked out of the rally because they detected I was not for the event, which I guess is technically true. I just want to talk to people. And the principle behind this is that if you're going to take my money and you feel passionately about something and you're very, very convinced, or you have convictions about what you're doing, you should be able to defend your position, especially, even if you're not an educator, you should certainly be able to do it. So when I went to the website on the way there, I noticed some of the impact they want to make is class size reduction, teacher compensation increases. Sure, $790 million will do that. Dropout prevention, nowhere on here does it say how they're going to do that. Full day kindergarten, more school time, great. Compensation increases for all kinds of student support. You don't have to read all this, but I'll just tell you, teacher shortage, class size, 700 million. Guess what? It's coming out of the 1%, and the legislator can't take it away. It's all focused on the money. And this is actually my issue with it. And so I think if you're someone who, by the way, I just want to get this out there. One of the ladies I talked to, do you know anyone who's a teacher? Did you go to public school? Did your kids go to public school? Then that's it. You can't say anything about this. I'm like, no, that's not exactly it at all. You can say a lot about it. You can say, I want to improve it. I care about my kids, which is why I'm emotionally invested in this. It's my money you're taking and doling out to these institutions. We should absolutely be able to question them and their motives. So I thought it was actually kind of interesting. When you go to Google this, the language on the stream, this is what an education movement looks like. This is what it looks like. We are the people we're waiting for. Look at the size of this crowd. Man, I should have gone to that one. That would have been action. I promise I'll start going to them from now on and have some great discussions, which, by the way, a couple of discussions were very good. I really enjoyed talking to people, and then I got kicked out for no reason because I wasn't really causing any trouble, but they were there to sign petitions, not talk about why this is so important and answer questions. So I want to get to a couple of those real quick, and I'll try to fix my screen so it's full screen. Now you just go to square box for now. I'll probably post an article here. If you want to check out the content and the links to the articles that I cite from, I'll put them up on my Patreon page because there's a lot here to dissect. So if you know anyone who's very passionate about RedForEd and they haven't asked me the important questions, maybe this is something you can share with them, because I love kids too. I love education in air quotes. I just don't agree about what the definition of education in air quotes is. I think it's the same thing about Romans after 500 years saying, what's the matter? Don't you like money? They had a very eroded and deflated currency. That's not the word I'm looking for. A diminished currency that they were using, and its value had changed. And that's how what I feel has happened in education. So I have a list of RedForEd questions I went there armed with, and I won't go through those, but I want to talk about how someone from RedForEd should change my mind. And to do that, they'd have to answer a lot of the questions that I don't hear them talking about at all. Number one, if you're an educator, please educate me. In the comments, let's hear it. There is no positive correlation between spending and education. There isn't. I want to show you a chart. It's devastating for the educational establishment. Hang on here. Here it is. Check this out. Trends in American public schooling since 1970. And again, I will link to all this so you can check it out. The blue line here is the cost of education, total, K through 12, of a single student graduating in the given year adjusted for inflation. All right. That's since 1970 when it was $57,000. In 2010, $164,426. The brown line is the number of employees working for the K through 12 system. These lines all the way down here that are hardly moving, and when they are, it's not in the right direction, are the scores, the output, the productivity we're getting out of the education system. This is by the late Andrew Coulson as of May 2013. His data source, the U.S. Department of Education's own numbers and NAEP tests. And this is on 17-year-olds, people who've been in school for a long, long time. So my fundamental question is the premise Why are we saying the solution to this problem is to just throw more money at? Why is that always the answer? Let me give you some facts here. Since World War II, inflation-adjusted spending per student in American public schools has increased by 663%, as you can see by the chart. So the question is, where'd all the money go? Where's the money? One place it went was to hire more personnel, as you can see. Between 1950 and 2009, American public schools experienced a 96% increase in student population. During that time, public schools increased their staff by 386%. That's expensive. That's part of the reason they need more funding. 4 times the increase in students. The number of teachers increased by 252%, over 2.5 times the increase. The number of administrators and other staff increased by over 7 times the increase in students. More funding, please. This staffing surge still exists today from 1992 to 2014, the most recent year we have data available. American public schools saw a 19% increase in their student population and a staffing increase of 36%, still almost double the rise of students. It has tapered off a bit, but at some point, you probably can't hire that many more administrators. I don't know. I'm not an educator. Now, this is a decades-long staffing surge in American public schools, and it's been tremendously expensive for taxpayers. $164,000 to educate a student. Think about how much money that is. That's insane. Yet it's not led to significant changes in student achievement. For example, public school national math scores have been flat. National reading scores have declined slightly for 17-year-olds since 1992, almost 26 straight years. Point number 2, cost is the problem. It's not the solution. Let me go over some more numbers with you. In the USA, the education spending is the highest of any country in the civilized world. I think Luxembourg used to be higher, but it no longer is. This is from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development in 2013. It's like the UN. There's 36 advanced nations that are part of this group. I say it's like the UN, right? If we break it down per year, the United States spent more than $11,000 per elementary school student in 2010 and more than $12,000 per high school student per year. When researchers factored in the cost for programs after high school education, such as college, vocational training, the United States spent over $15,000 on each young person in the system, more than any other nation in the report. Now, in absent comparisons, these numbers might not mean much. So the sum inch passed some developed countries and far surpassed others. Switzerland, total spending per student was $14,922. Mexico averaged $2,993 in 2010. No wonder they are pushing their kids over the border with smugglers to have a chance at getting a much more expensive education. The average OECD nation spent about $9,313 per young person. So again, this premise that more money is going to fix the problem, let's look into it a little further. $7 billion. That's how much the Department of Education says was a complete and total waste. According to the Washington Post, an article which I'll link here in the notes eventually, this block grant program passed in 2010 was the largest, air quote, federal investment ever targeted to failing schools, sending $7 billion of taxpayer money into the program between 2010 and 2015. Ironically, that's about $690 million times 11, somewhere around there, times 10, somewhere between 10 and 11, about 1/10. I went to public school. I don't math. The DOE report found that despite this infusion of federal dollars, that's a nice word for it, into the nation's worst schools, there was no difference in test scores, graduation rates, or college enrollment between the schools that received the grants and those that did not. None. The failure of the heavily funded school involvement grant experiment led to meaningful education improvement for underperforming schools. The failure of it to lead to improvement mirrors broader national data showing no link between school spending and student achievement. More funding, please. Number 3. My problem with this is, where is the Socratic method? And this is demonstrated by the fact that they didn't even want to talk to me. I know they're getting petitions. Some of them were very polite, and I will post the video footage. There's a ton of it, so I haven't done it yet. Of the teachers who did talk to me, very nice, very respectful, friendly people. We'd probably get along great, but I admitted straight up, I am not a fan of RedForEd, and I want you to help me understand why your cause is going to help the students, not the teachers. I get they're going to get more money. How is it going to help the students? And the first answer was, well, hopefully, 3 times I heard that. 3 out of the first 4 people I interviewed. Well, hopefully, like, all right, thoughts and prayers, here we go. The Socratic method, why can't we ask the right question, right? The answer to every question that's being asked is more funding, more money. Our global education rank plummets while this more funding, more money is being thrown at us. Perhaps we should start asking better questions that elicit better responses. Let's start with, how are other countries managing to do more with less? The answer to that question is not more funding. Pew, let me put this study up here. The Pew Research Center has said, I don't know what year this is, let me check it out. They're telling us that the U.S. students' academic achievement still lags that of their peers in many other countries. This is February 2017, but the study incorporates data as recently as, I believe, 2013. I'll check. Here's the chart that matters right here. And blow this up. Average scores of 15-year-olds taking the 2015 program for international student assessment. Now, here's what's crazy. In the old days, during our heyday, the U.S. was the global leader. We were the innovator. We were the ones kicking everyone's trash, setting the model, and setting the pace for other nations. We've fallen from grace just a little bit. In the science category, we are down to number 23, 24. Mathematics, whoa, down here at number 40. And reading, number 24. How far behind the rest of the world will education fall before we start asking questions that have an answer besides more funding? That's what I'd like to know. Socratic method, not sure if it's still taught. Let's ask more important questions. Let's get some good answers. RedForEd doesn't touch this. Number 4, too many students overall are dumb. That's kind of what we saw on this chart here, but let's talk about it some more. We call it education, but really that's far too generous. I'm not against education. I have to say this again. I got a video I'm going to show you later where, how could you be against education? I'm not. We just don't agree on the definition. I'm strongly against an inferior imitation being provided in its place and using the same name. Earlier this month, well, actually it was last month in April 2018, 2 months ago, the 2017 National Assessment of Educational Progress, aka the NAEP, which is also known as the nation's report card, was released. It's ugly. Only 37% of 12th graders tested proficient or better in reading. Only 25% did so in math. 37%. When I was at RedForEd, I would ask, how many people, based on the nation's report card, NAACP, do you think are proficient in reading? 70%, 60%, someone said 85%. I was telling teachers, it's 37%. One of the last ladies I talked to who did not want to be on camera and really didn't even want to talk to me, but I got her talking a little bit, said, don't you think it's a did you say tragedy or travesty? I don't remember. Don't you think it's really horrible that teachers have to spend their own money in the classroom? And I said, sure, but like Thomas Sowell says, in absence of other questions or other comparisons, such as, don't you think it's horrible that on average 37% of American 12th graders are proficient in reading? Less so in math. Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean that teachers should be spending their own money in the classroom. Sure, but let's keep it in perspective here. How much money are we talking about? Are they spending $700 million in the classroom? Where's your data? Oh, I'm like, this is Common Core economics that you're coming at me with. Where's the data? Where's the evidence? Children can't read. They can't do math. Check out the Bruce Dietrich Price thing. He talks about how our children are basically functionally illiterate. Forbes magazine said that the Fortune 500 spends $3 billion a year to teach remedial English to its employees. $3 billion. And 690 million is going to fix that? I don't know. I think we're asking the wrong questions. What's amazing about this is it's worse for black students. Now, I'm big on not being racist and not hating black people and not holding them to lower expectations, which a lot of these people kind of subtly do. And I got another video I want to do on an article on Medium that blew my mind the other day. Like, just talk about triggered. Among black students on the same report card, 17% tested proficient in reading. 7% in math, 7% proficiency in 12th grade. More funding, sure. Students are dumb. In 2006, there was a geographic literacy survey of youngsters between 18 and 24 years of age by the National Geographic and Roper Public Affairs Institution. Less than half could identify New York and Ohio on a U.S. map. 60% could not find Iraq or Saudi Arabia on a map. I really want to play the clip of Miss USA talking about why we can't find Iraq on a map, such as have maps. And 3/4 could not find Iran or Israel. In fact, 44% could not locate even one of those 4 countries. Youngsters who'd taken a geography class did not fare much better. One of the things I touched on with Bruce was sight words. My kids come home with sight words every day from school, and they're so proud when they learn them. And then every now and then they'll look at a word they should know and they'll say the completely wrong word, like they're speaking a foreign language. And we talked about how it's because they're recognizing symbols and they're not learning phonics, and how dangerous this is for the reading ability, particularly young boys who need to feel like they're good at things, who need to feel cocky and, what's the word I'm looking for? They need to feel assured that they're competent to do things that they need to do. Not that girls don't, but hopefully you catch my drift here. And he talked about how in 3rd grade, boys just basically throw in the towel and say, screw this. I'm here to disrupt now. I'm here to cause trouble. I don't like feeling stupid. There's no such, let's see, in 1955, Rudolph Flesch and Johnny Can't Read said he looked at all the research. There were 11 studies from 1913 to 1948. In all of them, phonics was the superior way to learn how to read, and the study suggested that kids should be able to read proficiently by the 1st grade. He thought this would end the debate about how to teach children. A century after the first study, Malcolm Dare, a Canadian expert, summed up the latest research from the UK. There's no such thing as a silver bullet in education, but systematic phonics comes pretty close. Doubters ought to read this report by Dr. Marilyn Grant, an English educational psychologist. She's actually reporting on 2 studies. The first is a 2-year study of children who were taught to read using systematic phonics. At the end of 2 years, when they were just 6 years old, all 30 children were fluent readers who could read well above grade level, 6 years old. The second study is a larger longitudinal study following up on a much earlier cohort of 700 disadvantaged children who had been taught to read using systematic phonics but then received no special treatment. At the end of grade 8, the group as a whole could read significantly above the national average, and not one child had difficulties with literacy. Disadvantaged children. I'd like to know what it was costing to educate those kids. Just me. Number 5. There's 8, by the way. We're over halfway. Too many teachers overall are also dumb. This is something we don't want to talk about, but we need to. I live in Arizona. We just had a teacher in the West Valley that was basically raping her 13-year-old student. She makes the same amount of money as other teachers there. She's treated the same way, and they kind of had a hard time firing her, although she was out quicker than most. She's also fairly attractive and married, which boggles my mind. The kid was like 15. But anyway, she's insane. I don't know who hired the person. I don't know what the rigorous testing exam was. I don't know what she was certified to. I just know it's a total joke, and that kind of thing shouldn't happen. But more funding. Let's see. There's another educational issue. These are the words of Walter Williams. That's neither flattering nor comfortable to confront. That's the low academic quality of so many teachers. It's an issue that must be dealt with if we're to improve the quality of education. Most states require prospective teachers to pass a certification test. Let's sample some of those test questions. These are the people that are teaching your youngsters. Here's a question from recent tests given to college students in Michigan planning to become teachers. Which of the following is largest? A, 1/4, B, 3/5, C, 1/2, or D, 9/20? 9/20. 9/20. 9/20. The Arizona teacher certification test, ooh, goody, my state, asks, quote, Janet can type 250 words in 5 minutes. What is her typing rate per minute? A, 50, B, 66, C, 55, or D, 45. The California Basic Educational Skills Test asked the test taker to find the verb in the sentence. Quote, the interior temperatures of even the coldest stars are measured in millions of degrees. A, coolest, B, of even, C, are measured, or D, in millions. Where's the verb? Not sure. It goes on. There's a couple more examples here. My guess is that these are questions that an 8th grader or 9th grader with a good education would be able to answer fairly easily. Such test questions demonstrate the very, very low bar that states set in order for one to become a certified teacher. Even with such low expectations, college graduates have failed these and similarly constructed teacher certification tests. Sorry, I need more water. It's been dry here. A 2011 investigation by WSB-TV found that 700 Georgia teachers had repeatedly failed at least one portion of the certification test they were required to pass before receiving a teaching certificate. Nearly 60 of them failed the test more than 10 times. There were almost 300 teachers in the Atlanta school district and on their payroll who had failed the state certification test 5 times or more. I'd take you back about 10 years or so to the No Teacher Left Behind, where they found out that teachers had systematically been cheating the students for 10 years, bumping their grades up, cheating on their exams for them, and getting all kinds of awards and recognition, getting trips, getting bonuses, only to find out that A students were C students, and these kids were all, I don't want to use the word I was going to use, far behind where they should have been. Because more funding, teachers got to get paid. Number 6, corollary with number 5, education majors are nearly worthless. I'm sorry. The major for the most ill-prepared students, sadly enough, is education. These people cannot fix the problem. And I don't hold teachers responsible for this. I resent the fact that they're being used as pawns to help the people that want to dump more money in the Department of Education's coffers. Most of them are just doing their best. They love their jobs. They want to help kids, but they're still ill-prepared and unable to fix the problem as it is. Now, when students' SAT scores are ranked by intended major, we learn some interesting things. I'll show you what I got here. But here's a list, a ranking by combined scores. You got to scroll down a little bit to get to education. It's right here. This is overall. If you can see that there. I think it's number 26 of 38. And they break it down by all the different characteristics, reading, math, writing, etc. It's not good. It's pretty ugly. And even that's not so bad, but what's the solution to it, right? Another article writer that I was searching out said he thinks the solution is a practice whereby teachers are required to be hired according to their undergraduate major. He said, I learned this talking to a headmistress of a private school. She said she doesn't hire education majors, never does. She said that if she hires a teacher to teach chemistry, math, English, or another subject, the person must have a bachelor's degree in that discipline. Pedagogical techniques can be learned through short formal training, coaching, and experience, whereas in my experience with my kids, most of the training, recurrent training, and drills are based in the pedagogical techniques. Now, I don't know what the teacher knows and is able to transfer to the kids, but that's the system we live in. Number 7, pro-choice is supposed to be good. Yeah, pro-choice, except when it comes to schools. More than 43,000 families are on waiting lists. 43,000 are on waiting lists to get their children into charter schools. And this study is probably a couple years old. In D.C., Baltimore, 25% of public school teachers send their children to private schools. In Philadelphia, 44% of teachers send their children to private schools. It's similar to other cities. Cincinnati, 41%. Chicago, 39%. Rochester, New York, 38%. The list goes on and on. Some teachers don't preach what they practice. Why would they? Especially if they can afford not to. Number 8, teacher corruption, hypocrisy. It's kind of the same topic, right? We haven't even, you know what, I kind of combined those two, so we'll just stop there. I was going to talk about Obama and the charter school, the voucher program that we got shut down. But look, we haven't talked about homeschooling. We haven't talked about sexual predators posing as teachers. We haven't talked about school shootings. We haven't talked about bullying. We haven't talked about the strong correlation between public schooling and depression, public schooling and a suicide epidemic, all of which RedForEd doesn't even pretend to try and fix. They don't even address it. More funding, please. And what really upsets me about this, and I went and I listened to Jonah Goldberg on National Review at the Goldwater Institute a few days ago, and he talked about the pervasiveness of different types of utopianism. Am I saying that right? And basically, he judges their, I want to say their merits. He judges their ideals and their intentions based on how they describe utopia, what it's going to look like. And he was talking about how the most frustrating thing is the elite education utopia. And I don't have time to go into the details of it now. Maybe I will later. But basically just how pernicious it is to be totally outside of the bubble and to know what's best for your kids and your family and your people and then preach something totally different than that. And in this comparison, he was talking about how everyone says go to college, but the results, the data actually shows that the same benefit can be gotten from getting married as going to college. But how often do they talk about getting married? Not very often, because it just sounds really judgy, whereas everyone can get on board with going to college, even though it can be a colossal wasted expense if you pick the wrong school, the wrong major, or you don't really know what you're doing there. So I want to talk about that just to wrap up here. And John D. Rockefeller, probably in a move to improve his image, we'll never know for sure, poured millions of dollars into education, millions. Around 1902, it was a long time ago, he funded another organization called the General Education Board, the GEB. He wanted to influence education throughout the country, but especially in the South. The board's mentality is revealed in a letter from Frederick Taylor Gates, a Baptist minister and the GEB's director, to the other members of the board. As you listen to this, please savor the astonishing arrogance and paternalism, and tell me if a century later these traits don't still permeate the education establishment. Quote, "In our dreams, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding bands. The present education conventions fade from their minds, and unhampered by tradition, we work our own goodwill upon a grateful and responsive rural folk. I hate the word folk, by the way. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children philosophers or men of learning or men of science, men or women of science, people of science. We have not to raise up from among them authors, editors, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo, great artists, painters, musicians, nor lawyers, doctors, politicians, statesmen, of whom we have an ample supply already. The task we set before ourselves is very simple, as well as very beautiful, to train these people as we find them to a perfectly ideal life just where they are. So we'll organize our children. We'll organize them. We'll teach them to do in a perfect way the things their fathers and mothers are doing in an imperfect way, in the home, in the shops, and on the farm. The students should be the ones going on strike. Don't our children deserve better? See you next time. Have a happy